Hello everyone, welcoming you all here at the launch of the $1 trillion India FinTech Opportunity, a report by Chiratae Ventures and Ernst & Young. We have with us here today the panel of authors, and we'll be just doing a quick round of introduction. Firstly, we have Tn Sundaram joining us. He's the founder and vice chairman at Chiratae Ventures. We have Sushil Zaregaonkar. He's a partner with the FS Consulting and Digital Transformation Practice at EY. We have Mandeep Julka, who's a VP with Chiratae Ventures and a sector co-lead for FinTech. And I'm Avni Jain. I'm an EVP with the fund, and I'm also a sector co-lead for FinTech. Firstly, just to get started, CCM, would be great to hear your point of view on what's happening in this space and how we're looking at this evolving over the next few years.
Yeah. Thank you, Avni. Financial services is actually the plumbing on which the whole economy runs. So to that extent, we have been looking at how in the journey of India going from $3 trillion to $5 trillion and its journey towards $10 trillion, how FinTech is going to play. And we have come out with a report which says that we will be by 2030, will have $1 trillion AUM, which is in the form of loans and assets under management, as well as insurance coverage, which has a potential of $200 billion of revenue for the sector. And this could mean that it is not just FinTech, but those existing financial service companies, which are also adopting tech in a big way. And FinTech in it, FinTech facilitated AUM will be about $1 trillion as we see. What are the key drivers of this? If you look at it, number one, I think there is a huge regulatory support. India, in that sense, has provided the rails for FinTech to grow, just like we saw the India Stack come up, UPI come up, and so many other initiatives that are coming up. So they are all facilitating actually adoption of FinTech in a much more open way. So India's FinTech adoption in payments is far better than many of the developed markets. The second is actually a very tech-savvy consumer base, which is adopting, and irrespective of the strata of the society, now the adoption of tech with over 800 million smartphones, which are using in some form or the other 4G data, 3G data to be able to use social commerce and other things. I think they are actually moving into a direction where it's going to adopt in a big way. And third thing is actually the FinTechs are trying to solve for segments of population which are not covered, either in consumer or in the SME world, which are currently not efficiently covered by the existing FinTech players, existing financial service players, like banks, like insurance companies, right? And even wealth management companies. This is an area where as Indian economy grows and opportunity grows, the small pockets which are not efficiently covered can be covered by creating large companies. So that is going to be another big initiative that will lead to that. And actually innovation has two parts to it, right? One, where people are looking at innovating in product side. But beyond that, actually there has to be a full stack play, which innovates across the board, right? In terms of providing services, in terms of also, like, for example, in different segments, it will be in terms of underwriting, it will be in terms of providing much more efficient micro opportunities. So these will contribute to actually expanding the market. And along with expanding the market, FinTechs will play a very important role in increasing their market share.
Right, so that's insightful, TCM. Thanks for that. Sushil, would like to invite you to understand a little more about how you think the surrounding ecosystem is going to evolve to be able to actually help FinTech get to the point that we think they will get to.
Thank you, Avni. And I think to extend TCM's point, I think the Indian fintech ecosystem today is one of the most vibrant globally. And I think it's evolving very, very fast. The entrepreneurial landscape supporting the growth for more innovative fintech-led business models, which are also attracting more investment. Today, India has become a very attractive and large fintech hub from a perspective of investments also. To share some insights, fintech funding recorded a 3x jump in 2021, and also it was one of the highest average ticket size so far. We are also a home to more than 100 unicorns today. And to also think of fintech adoption, we are amongst the top countries in the world when you consider how fintech is getting adopted into day-to-day life. I believe one of the other reasons for the fintechs to grow in India is the availability of a strong collaborative ecosystem, which has really played a role in bringing out newer business models. The collaboration is no longer restricted only to a particular industry or a segment. Many of the fintechs are now collaborating with the likes of e-commerce, health, insurance. We've also seen a lot of collaboration with Tn industry. So I think there's also a very strong support and encouragement from the government in the form of various initiatives, be it the Startup India initiative that was launched in 2016, or the India Stack, or the UPI. We talk about Digital India initiative, the smart city projects. Again, a fabulous opportunity for the fintechs to collaborate there as well. And also the benefits in terms of tax reliefs that the government is providing have all helped the fintech industry really flourish. I think these fintechs also have been able to launch new products and solutions which have truly transformed the customer experience and the adoption, especially in the areas of payments, neo-banking, insurance, or for that matter, even wealth. So I believe this is a space to look out for, and we'll see a lot of collaboration amongst the fintechs and the ones that are cutting across the other industries.
Right, absolutely. And with that, I would like to go into the details of what we have explored in each of the verticals. Mandeep, I'd like to invite you to help us all understand what we think is going to happen in the payments landscape in the next few years.
Sure. Thanks, Avni. The way we see it, the fintech industry, the genesis of fintech industry in the country was basically started with the digital payments landscape. The earlier fintechs and the digital payment startups solved for multiple problems, including enabling frictionless and secure digital payments with world-class UX. Some of the initial solutions were around payment gateways, bill payments, software and API providers, and multiple e-commerce solutions. And given the scale of the opportunity that we are looking at, which is present in India, it is not surprising that digital payments has managed to garner the maximum share of funding over the years from the investment community. In fact, as recent as over the last 5 years, we've seen digital payments get more than $9 billion of investments. And while the share of this industry has come down in terms of investments over the last few years, for example, it was around 68% in 2017, whereas it's now 44% in 2021. Still, it's a considerable amount of funding going into this sector, which goes on to show that how much scope there is for further innovation as well as further growth. And while we say all this, I don't think we can ignore the role played by the government and regulators in spawning the amount of innovation and the novelty that the sector has come to be known with. For example, the entire India Stack phenomena, including UPI and AEPS, they have strongly enabled historically how much activity this sector has seen. Though going forward also, we will continue to see that, because the idea over here from the regulators and the government side is to enable a cashless and a paperless society in the country. And while the previous solutions to a large extent have solved for on both B2C and B2B side for tier 1 and tier 2 markets. I think considerable amount of work needs to be done for tier 3 and beyond. And that's where we will see the next, or we expect to see the next phase of growth. For example, RBI recently came up with a circular to promote more offline digital payment solutions. So that is one area, where we will see more innovation coming in terms of how to enable the non-smartphone based users to use digital payments ecosystem. Another thing is the physical POS, and the usage of physical POS has been decreasing over the last few years. And going forward, we expect the movement to move towards more of MPOS and then eventually software POS, which is a much more asset light and a less expensive way of doing business. That said, I think there's still considerable scope of growth as well as scale to be built, given the size of the population and the size of the opportunity. And we are very excited for things to, whatever things will come up next.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Mandeep. Moving on, we will now touch upon digital lending, which has so far been the favorite child of investors, thankfully, primarily to do with the fact that monetization there becomes much easier. TCM would like to hear from you what you think is going to unfold in this sector over the next few years.
Yeah, this, like you said, I think it's a huge opportunity. In fact, in the last 5 years, about $3.5 billion got funded in the lending space, fintech lending space. And we expect by 2030, the AUM of just the lending space will be about $515 billion. And where we see significant innovation come in, and as you see, even payment companies have moved on to monetizing, like Paytm and others are now monetizing only through lending to SMEs and also maybe to consumers, right? So we do see a massive influx taking place because India's current population who has taken loan is a very small base. Even whole credit scores are not more than 300 million users. And out of that, people who have a current credit card is only about 70 million, right? And if you remove the duplication of credit cards, it's even much smaller. So there's a huge headroom for it to grow. And one of the key challenges that existing financial players have faced was that there is not sufficient data. Today, with the digital economy coming in and various ways in which the fintechs are trying to collect data, collate data, and then look at the data for underwriting, it's becoming much more innovative. The other important thing that I have noticed in the last 18-24 months is that there is a realization both on existing financial service players as well as on fintech that it is not a question of replacing each other, but it's more a question of actually collaborating with each other. And in some sense, the regulator in terms of RBI is also actually promoting the concept of co-lending, where the origination can be done by the fintechs for various segments, whereas the wholesale lenders can still continue to participate in it. And the risks and rewards are actually can be differentially owned and shared. This will make sure that the wholesale deposit base, which is managed by large banks and also by large NBFCs, but who are finding it very difficult to be able to reach small segments and in a more efficient way, actually will be able to solve for it. It's the same way that the MFIs at some point in time solved for small loans, but today fintechs are doing it at an even more efficient way in terms of cost, while getting a lot more data, right? Take for example, buy now, pay later, which was actually a very interesting model, which was started, and it's not new, right? At the time of sale, at the point of sale, what was being made available, but there was a lot of friction in the physical model, right? and only one or two lenders could actually do it in a much more efficient way. And that too, that was done in very small times, like in festival times, right? But today, with fintech coming in, BNPL is becoming almost like a checkout product, right? And in fact, there are more innovations that are taking place in that, where people are looking at it not only at a checkout, but also at the time of check-in. If actually a potential of a loan availability is made available when somebody gets into e-commerce site or somebody walks into a store, then does it helps increase the sale, right? Those are the roles today fintech plays, and we believe that that's going to be actually extended to B2B also, where there are a lot of small B2B players who are not getting any long-term credit, but even a working capital easing in this form where they can actually continue buying and then pay, let's say, like a credit card payment once in 45 days, then I think that can help them in terms of increasing their business. And that is something that quite a few companies are attempting in B2B space. And then they are taking it in either verticals, or some of them are taking in horizontal basis and partnering with some of the large FMCG players and various other ecosystem players to be able to get the data, right? And I think this is expected to actually lead to an explosion, because across the board, whether consumer, SME, the percentage of loan to GDP is substantially low. We expect that this will expand further, though may not reach developed market levels, but I think fintechs will help increase this.
Right. No, absolutely. In fact, it's interesting to see how, BNPL, while it was a payments option available, is actually, finally at the end of the day, a lending product. So the market has evolved very well and has accepted it, and we definitely will be seeing that this is going to impact not only the consumer space, but also the SME space. So absolutely agree with that. Thanks for that, TCM. Moving on, looking at Wealthtech as a space, right? So Sushil, here also we're expecting some interesting things to happen in the next few years. It would be helpful to understand from you what are the key things we should all be waiting to watch out for.
Yeah, I think, Avni, just like with lending, the Wealthtech again is becoming a very interesting space. Especially if you consider the last 2 years, there's been a significant growth and participation from the retail investor segment. A trend I believe will continue in the coming years, as the markets also mature. And I think this is also supported by the digital and the fintech adoption. So, for example, if you look at the digital discount brokers, there's a huge uptake in the number of accounts that these digital discount brokers have. Right from the pricing model to the target segment that they're going after, it's really bringing a huge segment which was either underpenetrated or underserved in the past. So I think the wealth market offers a huge potential. If you also look at some of the estimates, just like with lending, only 2% of Indians who actually invest in stock, as compared to, say, a more mature economy like the US, where the number would be well beyond 50%. I also think that with the potential, the wealth tech market will be, witnessing a huge growth, and by estimates, we think it would go beyond $200 billion by 2030. In the last 5 years itself, we've seen a significant investment in the wealth tech space. We've seen investments go beyond $1 billion, and we've seen a launch of a lot of new wealth tech companies in India. We've also seen participation from global players in India, and we're trying to sort of see how the market evolves and how do they coexist. But I think the growth essentially is driven by innovation, changing demographics of the investors, the underpenetrated and underserved customers, and also some of the market enabling forces. The general aspiration to grow wealth and understanding of financial services by the retail investor has also gone up, thanks to a lot of initiatives by the government at the same time a lot of data that is available online, right? Will help retail investors come to the. I feel we will see more of is having products launched for specific customer segments. So a lot of people are staying away from, say, retail investments or real estate investments. So from perspective of real estate investments, also there's no real product available where you could possibly go and invest part of the real estate buy. So a lot of fintechs and wealthtechs are playing in this area where they're launching specific products for specific customer segments that don't exist today. So there's going to be a lot of innovation that we'll see in this area. I also feel that specific solutions in the area of social trading. These will all be areas to watch out for. There will be significant growth in this space. Also from a B2B, a B2B, and a B2B, B2C segments, there will also be models that will come out. For example, we've seen growth in algo trading. This is something that was not very well understood by retail investors, something that was mainly with proprietors. I think that will also sort of see a lot of adoption going forward. We also feel that there will be a sustained growth in wealth tech space because of the introduction of new asset classes, such as cryptos and NFTs. We've already seen a lot of action there. Obviously, the regulator will play a crucial role in how we see the adoption in this area, but I think this is the area to watch out for.
Right, absolutely. Moving on from Wealthtech, we will also now look at InsurTech, right? So I think insurance as a space in India is highly underpenetrated. We are at 4.2% of insurance penetration in 2021, which is at the global average level, but that has primarily been due to the pandemic. It's yet to be seen how this actually sustains over time once things settle down. But the interesting thing is that those investments in the space has been picking up, with last year investments in the space being about 667 million, which has been the highest ever the space has seen. And over the last 5 years, we've seen about $2 billion being invested into the space. So there is a lot of hope for this sector, primarily because of the fact that there is huge potential to grow and a large headroom available. And so the fintechs have been trying to capitalize on this through innovation in not just product, but also in delivery. So far, what we've seen has happened in this space is the focus has been mainly on the distribution and listing side. But slowly we are seeing players come in across the value chain. So, not only just at the point of distribution, but at the point of even doing the underwriting. And with the explosion of data and the fact that digital adoption has increased significantly over the last few years, it's become interesting to see how players are coming up with models to write and create specific bite-sized products as well. One other area where we see there is going to be huge innovation, and which is also one which will benefit through this, is the claims processing area. Typically, so far it's been very highly operational, and now fintechs are experimenting with how that can be changed. The other one good thing that's happened for the sector is that the current regulatory regime that we have is extremely progressive, and they are also thinking about how this space can grow further. So far, partnership approach has been the key approach to which fintech players have experimented with new products and new service delivery models. But now the view is that these new micro insurance players can come in, which are addressing a very specific need for a very specific subsegment in the market. And we expect that given the progressive regulatory regime, this is all going to be a matter of time where we see new age insurance players coming up who are not only just doing the initial bit of the underwriting, but are actually also taking the policy on the book. Similarly, if you look at the different spaces, I think health insurance as a space is looking extremely promising. Primarily also due to the fact that on the health side, there are a huge number of initiatives that the government is taking. The national health stack is going to be very beneficial for companies to actually come and innovate for the space in a big way. We've already been seeing interesting models from a group health insurance standpoint that have emerged in the last 2-3 years. And we continue to expect innovation happening in this space. Also because, the customer has become much more aware. Thanks to COVID, that has been one positive change where people are looking more at wellness rather than, cure. So prevention being much more important than cure, and being able to be prepared for the eventuality when they might need an actual cover. People are really thinking about going out and, actually purchasing this as a product. So that way this has been a boon for the industry, right? And so we expect that over the next few years, digital health insurance to pick up with great speed. So that's the view on insurance. Lastly, we would also like to cover the view on neo-banking. That has been one space which has seen a lot of activity, very, very different models. And Sushil will be helpful to understand from you how you think this is going to impact the industry and how some big changes are expected to unfold in this over the next few years.
I think, Ami, this is again a very, very exciting area. We've seen the neobankings actually accelerating the digital transformation in the banking sector. I've been fortunate enough to have got an opportunity to work on some of the engagements where we partnered with neobanks, and I've seen the space very, very closely. If you look at from growth perspective, the neobanking space has witnessed a 5x surge in terms of investment the last year alone. We've seen some unicorns come along in this area. This will remain a very exciting space in the coming years, especially with banks focusing on setting up digital business units within the traditional banking unit. And I think neobanks are really helping accelerate that transformation and helping banks improve the customer experience today, either by focusing on niche customer segments. So, for example, we've seen neobanks operate in areas of, say, SMEs or millennials, or by focusing on building a product. For example, credit products, and TCM did allude to a few areas of lending, which are very, very exciting. I think the neobanks are really playing that role of accelerating the transformation there. Given the size and potential that the India market offers, you can see how highly attractive it is, and we've seen a lot of interest coming from foreign neobanks in India. We've seen banks from the Europe and the US trying to explore the Indian market and see how they fit in well and how they are able to capture on the potential that India has to offer. However, there are regulatory challenges that remain for now. I think neobanks yet can't operate by themselves, so they have to partner with banks, and we yet to see how that sort of transforms. But for the time being, I think they're collaborating with traditional banks, but at the same time competing with them. And this will probably lead to only better customer experience, better products that the banks end up offering in the market. And I think this is going to be a truly transformative space to watch out for in the coming years.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the close of understanding the trends in the specific verticals. We will now be moving on to understand what's going to happen in the surrounding ecosystem. India as a market has been fortunate to have a very, very supportive ecosystem to help the growth of FinTech. We will first look at trends which are going to happen in the financial inclusion and metaverse side. Mandeep, I'd like to invite you to understand some of the interesting things we're expecting to happen in this space.
Sure, thanks, Abni. So, when we talk about financial inclusion, we have to understand that though the fintech industry in the country has come a long way from, when it started, and considerable impact has already been made for the normal population of the country, there is still a humongous opportunity lying on the table, which is up for grabs. And therefore, it makes a lot of business sense also to work towards greater financial inclusion and capturing that part of the market. For example, TCM as well as Sushil and yourself also mentioned about the gap in the market under different subsectors. For example, only 2% of the Indian population participates in the stock market, whereas the number is around 55% in the US. TCM mentioned about the large, financing gap, credit gap in the country. And to put a number to this, for our country, household credit as a percentage of nominal GDP stands at around 34%. And the same is around 65% for developed markets. Similarly, whether it's non-life, health, or other forms of insurance, the penetration of those products is very low for our country compared to the rest of the developed markets and even China. So putting all that in context, I think there is a huge opportunity which the startups are now trying to solve for. So initially, while initially the products were being made to solve for tier 1 and tier 2, now they are trying to solve for this long tail of market, and the ultimate result is going to be financial inclusion, which is going to be a win-win all for not just the consumers, but also for the businesses as well as regulators who are basically trying to provide enabling environments to make all this happen. That said, though we have one set of fintechs solving for this long tail of the market, which are some of the longer standing and more secular problems, there are other set of fintechs which are trying to solve for the more recent phenomenons. For example, metaverse and decentralized finance, which enables commerce in metaverse. Now we have various startups coming up which provide crypto wallets, marketplaces to buy and sell digital assets, enabling buying and selling of NFTs. So these are also some of the areas where some of the fintechs are trying to solve for, and these are more on the recent side of the trends which we are seeing in the fintech industry. That said, again, while globally and especially in the developed markets, we've seen larger financial institutions establishing a very strong presence in metaverse. For example, HSBC and JP Morgan have staked their, have put their names out there in metaverse. On the Indian side, we are still a little early on that side. And I think considerable collaboration between the larger FIs as well as the newer fintechs is needed, along with a strong stamp of approval from the regulators that this is the way to go as well. And once those things come into place, we will also see Indian fintechs making a mark in the metaverse space.
That's actually a great point. So I fully agree, Manish, that while the global landscape is also nascent, I think India definitely has the ability to be able to actually leapfrog and potentially lead this for the globe. Moving on from here, PCM would like to invite you to understand trends that we expect to see from a regulatory standpoint, as well as the fact that India today is a hub for digital talent in the fintech. So how is that unfolding and impacting the globe? Additionally, fintech has become one vertical which has gone and intersected with other sectors, and there is huge potential and opportunity at those intersection points. So how do you see all of this impacting and giving the right sort of propulsion to fintech to be able to actually reach the numbers that we think they will reach? Yeah,
financial services has always been a regulated sector, right? And more so in India, right? Whichever segment that you take, there is one or the other regulator. In fact, this is one sector which has got multiple regulators. There are few companies in fintech today who are actually dealing with multiple regulators. And I think this is where I see all the regulators actually being able to be far more supportive of this in terms of providing sandboxes to innovate on new things, which till 3-4 years ago was not there in India, right? I think they have come a long way from saying that I will stop what you can do to saying that now I'll facilitate what you can do. That's a big difference, and that's going to play a very important role in the growth of fintech industry. The other thing is actually, globally, if you see in a lot of fintech companies, even in US, you will have Indian participation there. The total technology around the fintech, both from the financial services space as well as from the tech space, is something very large. So actually, India could be a fountainhead for a lot of fintech talent to go global. In fact, some of the innovations in India, which have been supported by the government like UPI, are now going to get adopted in other countries, right? That way, India, instead of following others, is actually setting the pace for fintech adoption globally, right? And that's going to play a very important role. Whatever works in India at Indian cost structure actually makes it that much more attractive in terms of disrupting elsewhere and also enabling some of the developing countries to innovate and adopt this for their growth, right? Now coming to the last point that you said, I think fintech started as a vertical, right? But because it is, like I said at the beginning, it is the plumbing of the whole economy, right? It has a potential to become a horizontal and touch every sector. Like for example, today, property technology. So where PropTech and FinTech, our innovations are coming in, whether it is fragmentation of ownership or various other things that are coming in, or agri-tech, right? For the whole, agriculture, which is possibly contributing 15-20% of the economy. And there, if the innovation has to take place, where efficiency has to come in, fintech has to play a very, very big role, right? And we see that happening already. Similarly, EdTech going with fintech, right? And across the board, you see every B2B player who's improving the efficiency in supply chains. That is also possible by making available the supply chain finance alongside, right? So it has a potential. It will become a horizontal, which cuts across the whole segment, and that will actually open up in every point of intersection with different segments of economy as they go digital, and fintech will jump in and to be able to facilitate that. So that's one more big tailwind I see.
Absolutely. So that brings us a close to discussing some of the interesting content topics that we have in the report that we will be releasing today. TKM, I'd like to pass on to you to give us any closing remarks that you have.
Yeah, it is very exciting time in the next 8 years to see how fintech will take off and how that will facilitate the growth of economy and possibly potentially also be a leader in the world in terms of innovation. And we are very excited to partner with EY, who also helped us in terms of thinking through some of these opportunities and then bringing out to the market so that it can possibly give a little bit more clarity, a little bit more guidance in terms of which sectors and segments for entrepreneurs to look into. And, I also would like to thank Mandeep and Avni, who have been co-authors with me, and especially Avni, who anchored this whole process over the last 6+ months and getting this whole thing out. And we are excited to and waiting to meet more fintech entrepreneurs and fund them.
Absolutely. With that, we will all take your leave. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.